This conference will now be recorded.
It's great till it's not. All right, see, Ms. Waters says yes now.
She can hear now.
Says yes now. Can anybody else confirm that?
Hello, hello.
Okay,
Mr. Camper, are you able to hear us now?
Brandon says yes, you can hear.
Okay. Okay. I think we're good now. Okay.
Okay.
You might, if you don't mind, I apologize, would you mind starting from the beginning just so we can make sure that those who are logged in?
Sure.
Oh.
Well, no, for sure. So starting with ZTA 2502, which is more housing now with a focus on workforce housing. Tomorrow is likely the final county council hearing on the matter. Just in the procedures for a ZTA, that's just kind of how it works. So we're rushing to get written testimony in, which we'll discuss tonight. I think everybody has a copy before them. And then I'll also be testifying in person tomorrow evening. There's 2 hearings, one in the afternoon, one in the evening. Other municipalities will also be submitting written testimony, and a few folks will also be testifying in person as well. And to keep in context, where we are with housing proposals at the county level is way ahead of where we felt we were in the fall. So for context, as proposed, this ZTA affects at most 10 village properties, 8 on Connecticut Avenue and 2 on Wisconsin. And the sponsors have said that historic properties will be excluded from the program. And if you exclude historic properties, you are down to a total of 3 properties, 1 on Connecticut and 2 on Wisconsin. So the effect of this ZTA is, dare I say it, de minimis. Certainly not for everyone affected by it, but
further reduced. It would only be 2 homes. It would only be 2 properties. Everything on Connecticut is within the historic district of varying designations, but everything on Connecticut is within the historic district.
Yeah.
And that would leave only the 2 properties on Wisconsin, one of which is Saxon Avenue.
Good. So of course we want to influence the outcome of this proposal as much as possible, but just so that everyone again keeps that context in mind, the impact on the village is far less than what the AHSI proposals would have included. So with that, we learned that they're going to keep the record open until March 24th, I think. We only learned that in the last few days, so it was unclear if our testimony, if what we were going to say was actually had to be submitted today before we'd be able to discuss it tonight. So this testimony was initially drafted thinking we wouldn't have an opportunity to discuss it, but fortunately we do have the opportunity to discuss it, make a few changes if the board so desires, and we can submit that updated testimony at any time tomorrow when I give my in-person testimony, or even later there too if the board so desired. We have until March 24th, but of course we want our testimony going in as early as possible just to have as big of an impact or as much influence over the county council as possible. So if we shift to the draft testimony, because I do think that,
Lou, can I ask
yeah, please do.
I would assume that given the village versus section 5, Martin's edition, that we're probably really lucky and unique. Or any other municipalities, do they have large quantities of historic properties that they would find themselves in the same situation we are, that is exempt?
Not large quantities. So the town confirmed that they have 1 property that is designated as an historic resource that is on the Connecticut Avenue corridor. There are none in sections 3 and 5. Martin's Additions has now been completely excluded because this is now focused on the corridors, and Martin's Additions is solely east of Brookville Road. And then I have posed a direct question to the planning staff of just how many homes in the approximate 2,500 that would be eligible under this legislative change are located within established historic districts. They did not know that number offhand. but they were going to be coordinating to get that answer. They indicated that they should have that answer to us within the next couple of days.
So we are quite unique,
Correct.
yeah, in that there's only one property, really.
Well, are
That this
we,
could be narrowed to, yeah.
last time we got an update, there were some things yet unsettled, and one of them I thought was what constitutes a corridor, and has that been settled?
Yeah, it
Because
has.
I think under the 100 feet, Grafton Street could be a corridor.
Yeah, so thankfully, the county released a map
Okay.
which designates the specific properties that this legislation would apply to. So that really helped to clarify. And you had raised the observation keenly last month that the legislation appeared to read that your property had to be addressed to the corridor. That is master plan to a minimum width of 100 feet, et cetera. And your reading was indeed correct, and the map confirmed that.
Okay.
That it's only properties addressed to Connecticut. So that's why, although there are many more along Connecticut and Wisconsin that directly abut those two corridors, there are only a total of 10 physically addressed to those corridors.
And the other one that stuck in my mind was the question of whether, for example, the one that said Oxford.
Oxford?
Yeah, no.
Maybe Quincy?
No, on Wisconsin.
Oliver.
Peskin?
Oliver.
Oh, Oliver.
The one that's on
Oh, yes.
Oliver.
Yes.
The question of could they switch could they buy the next door neighbor and have that be a bigger backyard essentially, because the house next door to them in fact is being rented at the moment and would be kind of primed for that.
Yeah. So I don't know if you wanted to address this.
So, and that's one of the key questions.
Yeah.
So, in the first point under eligible corridors of the testimony that you've got in front of you, we talk about urging a prohibition on the chaining or aggregation of adjacent lots. And that goes two ways. Number one is making sure that a lot that fronts on the corridor can't be combined with a lot behind it on the interior. And the sponsors, and Councilman Friedson in particular, have said that was to be excluded. It was never the intent. So we want to see that explicit in the language, but we're confident that that interior lot combination will be prohibited under the proposal. There's also the question of, can you combine multiple lots that jointly front the corridor? So two consecutive parcels that could be combined, and maybe you could get more on the combined parcel than on any one individually. So we're also asking for that in that first point in the testimony. We're probably a little less certain that that'll fly versus the interior combination. Does that kind of jive with your
But we
latest?
also don't have that situation. We have one property on Wisconsin plus the parking lot, right?
Correct.
So-
On the Wisconsin side, yes.
Yeah.
And so the property that you were referencing, Mr. Crockett, at the corner of Oliver and Wisconsin is actually not one of the properties, because they went through an effort a few years ago to have their property readdressed to Oliver Street.
Ah.
So maybe we need to find out what crystal ball they've been looking into that they made that change. And so it's actually the home at the end of Grafton Street that is the other property. Yes.
So, Paul.
Yeah. So, and then the second point is on the historic district, and to support also what Shana described earlier, that it can be an outstanding or a contributing property in a historic district, and therefore be precluded from this proposal. So that's where we get from, I guess, what was 8 properties on Connecticut Avenue down to 1. Yeah. And then the last point here on the eligible corridors is just we've requested a more detailed listing of what constitutes the eligible corridors. The next page goes through and makes a couple of suggestions, but I'm not going to walk through each of those individually. If folks have had a chance to read it, skim it, and so forth. We can just kind of go into question mode. To some extent, because we were writing this believing we'd have to submit it today, on some of these issues, we were asking questions without taking a position. Because we now have the option, at least as a board, to discuss it tonight. We could take a firmer stance, though of course all of the municipalities, I don't know if there's perhaps one exception of all the municipalities we're coordinating with, only one has had a municipal meeting before us in the time since this was released and since the map and so forth was made available. So all of the municipalities are kind of scrambling to take a position, get feedback from residents, and we're in pretty good shape relative to them. But with that, are there any questions just already outstanding
I guess,
on this? Yeah.
the only question is that we're very lucky. It seems to me that a member of the county council or planning commission is going to have a hard time opposing exemption in historic property. I mean, that, just from a public policy standpoint, seems like a rational and strong public policy argument. The only thing I would wonder about, Lou, is whether all the other municipalities we're coordinating with are going to have a very different approach. They might, in fact, because they don't have historic property, be totally opposed to this legislation, right? They might continue.
There are some that have more strenuous objections than
Yeah,
what we
I'm
have.
just wondering whether we can accomplish what this letter says, which I think is well constructed, without essentially taking a position that we support the legislation. In other words, just take out that first line in the second paragraph. That way, at least we're a little bit more deferential to our neighboring jurisdictions and might think this is still, a bad move.
Well, but I wouldn't characterize them as not.
Do they support it?
Being-
I mean, is their position?
So
They
I-
support a more precise approach like this.
Right.
Where everyone is significantly relieved that we have this much more precise approach.
And we do have Michelle Rosenfeld joining us virtually, and because she represents this coalition of municipalities, it might be appropriate to let her weigh in to give us a better read on if she believes anyone's really I'm only aware, as Mr. Forsberger mentioned, of one municipality that is going on record in opposition.
Okay.
But I believe everyone else, as Ms. Leonard referenced, are taking a more kind of nuanced position. Michelle, are you able to kind of weigh in on that
Sure.
question?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As a general,
Michelle, hang on one sec. We're not hearing you broadcast in the room. Give us just a sec.
okay.
And FYI, Sue Ellen has joined us on the virtual feed as well, if there are any specific questions that we need her to respond to. All right, Michelle, can you go ahead and try talking again? Let's see if we can hear you now.
Sure. Can you hear me?
No, not yet. One sec. Are you able to put it to the TV? Oh.
English sign language.
Yeah,
We could also try putting a microphone near your volume output. Do you know where it was coming out of? Yeah, if you can bend that down. Let's see. Michelle, why don't you try that again?
Okay, can you hear me?
No,
Okay.
sorry, hang on. Bear with us. Yeah, I don't think that's gonna broadcast so loud enough.
We're gonna get feedback.
and Ms. Waters is.
No, I think these are all pretty widespread questions. And the tone of all the testimony now is much more positive and constructive.
Yeah.
Michelle, can you hear us now?
I can hear you.
Oh, hey.
Now we can hear you.
All right, go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. So as a general rule, most of the municipalities are taking a position of support with questions or modifications. And most of the testimony that's going in really mirrors a lot of what is in the draft letter that you're reviewing tonight. One municipality has been a little less favorable. I'm not sure by the time the testimony is finalized if that might not be moderated somewhat. But as a general approach, the testimony that you are presenting very much supports the areas of concern and the types of modifications that most of the municipalities are also concerned about. So I think that you are largely supportive of sort of the general consensus on these issues.
Thank you. That's great to hear.
I wonder too if we could invite Michelle to offer up from your perspective, if we were to take a position up front that was in opposition, and then we wanted to ask for specific things to happen with this legislation, like exempting the historic district, do you feel that those requests might be ignored if we lead with outright opposition?
I do. You know, the proposal is scaled so far below what the attainable housing initiative was all about. And given the far less limited impact, particularly in your jurisdiction, I think it would be difficult to say that you oppose it, but you want modifications. It's a lot easier to go in and say, you've done a lot of good things. We like a lot of what you've achieved. Here are some specific issues that either we think need to be clarified or we would like you to modify. I just think in these legislative procedures, that's a much more productive way to move forward.
Thank you. I think that's helpful.
Thank you.
Any other questions just from the draft testimony? Any uncertainties? So these were primarily, again, questions that I think were a little less important to us than what was right on page one, bullet, the first number 1 and 2. So if folks are okay with it, we can go on to the other updates.
And I know that there is one edit that Sue Ellen proffered earlier that I know she and Michelle have had a conversation about. Michelle, did you want to weigh in about the one bullet that you all have decided we should probably just omit for now?
Sue Ellen raised a good point about the reading of one of the more technical provisions, and it's honestly an issue that is going to be addressed, I think, pretty uniformly across the municipalities. It's not such a significant point that I think we need to address it right now that we have the luxury of an additional couple of weeks. And I would like to make sure that Sue Ellen and Ron Bolt and I, all three, are crafting that language in the same way so that it's coming in uniformly across the municipalities.
And I believe
I don't have any concerns about leaving it out tonight, if that's your question.
I'm so sorry, I stepped over you. Say the last part again.
I said I don't have any concerns about leaving it out for tonight, if that's your question.
Yes. Okay. So this would be on page 2 under the ZTA text section. I believe it's bullet 7. Is that correct? I think the emails earlier may have referred to bullet 8, but I think it's 7 because that's the reference to County Code Section 25B26.
And
Shana,
I'm not sure I have the same draft that you're looking at, but
Okay. And I do.
I think there's only one issue that Sue Ellen and we were sort of conversing back and forth about today.
And I do hear Sue Ellen was weighing in now too as well. Sue Ellen, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Uh, I think that it's something that should be referenced, but I don't think it's being accurately referenced at the moment. And so we would like some leeway on this and not have to do it necessarily a supplemental testimony, but do it just directly once we confer with other counsel and make sure we have it accurately described. That's all.
Got it. Okay. So we can do that offline tomorrow.
Yes.
Correct.
I think we can.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sounds good. So if everybody's good for now on workforce housing, we can then shift gears to the state, and there are two state level issues. The one we've talked about most is the technical amendment to Section 2509 of the State's Land Use Act. That bill is now referred to House Bill 1167. And that's the bill that would clarify municipal authority to regulate construction, especially for housing with 4 or fewer units. The House Environment and Transportation Committee held a hearing on that bill last Thursday. They heard testimony only from District 18's own Delegate Solomon, who sponsored the legislation, and he's helping to shepherd it through the General Assembly. So it was short and sweet, as expected, and the expectation, fingers crossed, is that the bill will now go, if it's had its first reading and that hearing, and there's support from the Montgomery County delegation, as there is, it should now just go through the reading process, 2 more readings in the House before it goes over to the Senate, 3 readings there before it goes to the governor. So the goal there is that it makes its way through the legislative process, is signed by the governor, and I believe then it would take effect October 1. Any questions on that before we move on to the second state level issue? As far as the second state level issue, that's House Bill 503, also referred to as Senate Bill 430. This is the bill. It's described also as the governor's Housing Act. It would divide the state into regions for the purpose of calculating a jobs to housing ratio to identify regions with a housing shortfall. And for purposes of those regions, we are combined, Montgomery County, that is combined with Prince George's County, Frederick County, and then Montgomery County to equal the DC region. And there's a comparable combination of counties outside of Baltimore. And I say comparable because it's the DC region and the Baltimore region that, from the existing statistics, show a housing shortage. And where the statistics show a housing shortage, it would become, there would be a high threshold for a jurisdiction to deny approval of a housing project. There'd be very stringent requirements for a jurisdiction to deny a housing project. Now, there's a lot carried in the word jurisdiction there, in that by jurisdiction, do you mean the whole region? Do you mean the county? Do you mean municipalities? Who is responsible for addressing a regional shortfall? And a lot of those mechanics aren't clear from the bill, but those questions among them, all of the jurisdictions, counties, municipalities, both DC area as well as Baltimore area, we would expect, are asking these same questions and seeking clarification. So in that, we're in very good company in terms of larger jurisdictions than ours asking questions. And for the most part, both jurisdictions and associations, I'm also involved in this, Maryland Association of Counties, Maryland Municipal League, Montgomery Civic Federation. For the most part, they're asking questions. I think there is a hesitance to come out before we know the answers to those questions. There's a hesitance for folks to come out in opposition to the governor's bill. So I think the general position is proposing amendments. And for example, the Maryland Association of Counties has proposed very detailed amendments already. there are a few, even as we seek more information and look to influence how the legislation evolves, there are a few things that give us some reassurance that this would not be an extreme abdication of housing authority by the village as a municipality. For example, there is the requirement in the bill that a proposal could only be denied for objectively verifiable standards that were in place prior to the passage of the act. And that probably is the most important of the provisions that give us a little bit of reassurance in that the village has a history at being very rigorous and consistent in the application of the village code and permitting authority. So even if the bill were to carry through as is, we are on somewhat firmer ground probably than a lot of other municipalities or jurisdictions. There are still other things that give pause, though. Jurisdictions can't necessarily appeal when they can't necessarily appeal when their denial is denied. And Shana, help me out on that. What authority overrules a jurisdiction if they deny a particular housing proposal?
So my understanding is it would go to circuit court.
Yeah.
Michelle can respond to that, or Sue Ellen definitively, but I believe it goes to circuit court at that point.
So that's one concern, is that the jurisdictions would have limited rights of appeal. A second concern is that there's a burden of proof placed on jurisdictions denying a housing project to show that the project could not be amended in some fashion to make it financially viable. So suddenly now you have this whole tangled ball of wax or ball of string, take your pick, that is on the shoulders of the jurisdiction to determine, well, suddenly now a jurisdiction has to prove a negative effectively without any information or data. So with that, I think that and I'll let Shana and Michelle weigh in as to further next steps, but I think at this point, we know that we're in the same boat as a lot of other folks asking questions and raising concerns. Those other folks are far larger and suffer far more adverse consequences than we would. If you think about the county's whole planning process, could be very unsettled by the adoption of the legislation as currently drafted. So we're eager to keep tabs on this and see how it advances.
I don't, maybe I'm the only one that is this ignorant about it, but I don't understand what constitutes a housing project. For example, would buying an existing home and tearing it down and doing something else there, would that constitute a housing project? And the second question is, could they, for example, where Kirkside Drive goes past Hesketh, there's a vacant lot there because originally the road might have gone through there. Could they
It's not a lot.
Could they require the village?
It's an easement. It's not a lot.
Correct.
Yeah, but could they?
No.
Could they?
No, it's always going to be an easement in perpetuity.
Well,
But to your first question, if somebody were going to do a tear down and just wanted to put multiple units in place of a single tear down, would that be allowed under this proposal? And so that I don't get ahead of myself, I'll look to Shana and Michelle to weigh in on that. What governs in that case?
And I will defer to Michelle.
There's a lot we don't know about this yet.
The answer would be yes. Under the Jobs Housing Bill as it's currently drafted, it could be a single unit. It does not need to be multifamily, and it would encompass just about any type of land use review and approval that you can think of for a single unit. It would include a building permit application. For larger projects, it would include a site plan or a preliminary plan. It also could involve a conditional use or special exception. The definition of a housing project is extremely broad. And so that's one reason why there are so many jurisdictions who are concerned, because, certainly for larger projects, you often get into more discretionary types review, compliance with a master plan, for example. And the appeal process also is of great concern to many jurisdictions. So at this point, MML and MACO were going to meet with legislators and discuss potential amendments. And I will be in touch with MML tomorrow to talk to them about what those discussions were like and what kind of progress might have been made. There were some very specific legislative requests, amendments that had been presented by various jurisdictions. So it's they're making sausage right now. So I need to follow up and find out exactly how that's moving along. Things are in flux at the moment.
And is it still true, what I understood, that they can't, that project couldn't violate zoning? That this.
Correct. The project needs to adhere to zoning standards. What's challenging about the bill is that it in effect requires a jurisdiction to defend its standards. It kind of flips that burden of proof. Typically, a jurisdiction is presumed to have properly applied its code, and here the standard has flipped to the jurisdiction has to prove that the project is financially viable in certain circumstances. So it's very, very messy. But in terms of the impact on the village, you do have objective standards. The building standards that you would look at are very objective, very numerical. There's really no subjectivity. So I think you're well ahead of a lot of jurisdictions of being able to defend decisions that you would make.
Michelle, is there any sense of the timing of how this bill would move forward? Because today is March 10th. A typical legislative session would go no later than April 15th, right?
Right. Right.
And so the bill is cross-filed, so it's in both the House and the Senate. But can it move that quickly for this session, or is that a stretch and we might be talking about this again next year in some form?
I think it depends on whether or not there's going to be meaningful deference to the concerns that are raised by the jurisdictions, or if there's going to be more deference to the wishes of the governor. And I honestly don't have a clear sense of that right now because I haven't been able to talk to someone from MML since the public hearing. I don't know if Sue Ellen might have some insight that I'm not aware of. If so, Sue Ellen, please join in. But I'm at this moment, I'm going to have to update you in a day or two on that. I don't have a sense of that right now.
No, sure thing. Thanks.
Michelle.
I don't have anything to add to that.
Michelle, can you, what is the position of the Maryland Building Industry Association on the governor's bill? Have they been behind this initiative?
I think they've been very supportive of it, as have a number of housing groups.
Okay.
So, their view is, I think that this will make the development review process easier, more streamlined, shifts the burden essentially off their shoulders to a certain degree. So they have been in favor of it.
And I did watch both the House and Senate committee hearings on this bill, and they did speak in support of it. Because another component of this bill is requiring that a jurisdiction review and act on a building application within a certain time frame. I believe it's 1 year. Is that correct?
Correct. Correct.
And so one of the things that they're really in favor of is that they can have projects in the county's permitting pipeline for years. And so this would force that unless the jurisdiction has taken affirmative action, they essentially get a de facto building permit. And so they spoke in support of the overall objectives of the bill. And as the governor's director of the Department of Housing and I think it's Community Affairs, DHCA, stated they have premised this bill as an effort at getting to yes. They want the building permit processes in the Maryland jurisdictions to get to yes. And unless you can make a compelling argument and reason for why you can't approve a building project, it should go forward. That's the overall objective of this as presented by the governor and the director of his housing department.
A great initiative.
I think.
So we
that's it.
should wrap this.
We need a motion, don't we, on the
Well,
testimony?
let's
Yeah.
discuss this. So we can do this in substantially the form it's in and then,
I was just going to say,
Tweak
we
it.
should insert that language now since we've talked about some amendments that are still forthcoming from our attorneys. So whomever is comfortable making the motion, if you could just insert after written testimony, the phrase in substantially the form provided.
anybody want to make that motion? We're looking for a motion.
I move to authorize Board Chair Lou Morseberg, Vice Chair Lou Morseberg to submit written testimony in substantially
The form provided.
the form provided to the City County Council regarding CTA 2502 as drafted, and to provide in-person testimony at the County Council's public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And thank you, Lou, for providing in-person testimony at the county council's public hearing. Appreciate that. So we can move on to the next thing, which is our public hearing on the draft budget for the fiscal year beginning July 2025. Open for public comment. Do we have members of the public that wish to comment? Could you come to the microphone?
Hello, I'm a member of the public.
Hello.
I'm Saul Goodman, I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee. I don't have a lot to say, but I am here to support the public safety component of the budget. The chief reviewed it with the Public Safety Committee. The changes over last year, apart from cost of living adjustments, which we certainly support, do to us make good sense. They are largely designed to improve the ability of the police force to retain its staff and to enhance the chief's ability and the lieutenant's ability to recruit new people. It would be great if we could get to full staffing, and we've been a little short now for quite a while. So we compliment the chief on putting his thinking cap on how to improve things. I hope this is enough to get us over the top, that we can go back to full employment.
Thank you.
That's my
Thanks
hope.
for your comments.
You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the public?
And if I may just remember,
Yeah.
just to clarify, did you have a question about the zoning? Arthur? We'll talk offline. Okay, got it. Just wanted to make sure.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, so hearing no more public comments, I think we can move on to the next matter for board discussion, which are, we have some contract authorizations.
Okay. So I've come before you with two contract authorization requests. One would be for the consulting arbor services, and the other is for landscape maintenance services. So I'm going to talk about the consulting arbor services first. We publicly advertised for the consulting arbor services on the eMaryland Marketplace, and we received 4 complete bids. Of those bids, the lowest qualified bidder was Feather and Associates, who we've been working with for the last 10 years. I did reach out to his references, and they were very favorable of their working with them. Like I said, we've worked with them, so we have a detailed knowledge and experience with him. I reached out to the Tree Committee and the Public Parks and Green Spaces Committees, and both were in support of continuing our relationship with Feather and Associates. So I put before you all a contract request for 3 years with 2 extensions.
Anybody have any questions about this? Going with the,
I move to authorize the village manager to enter into a contract in substantially the form provided and subject to review by village council with Feather and Associates for the performance of consulting arborist services for an initial term of 3 years, with the option to extend the contract for up to 2 additional 1-year terms.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Great, that passes.
Okay. And then the next one was our landscape services contract. And this one was also advertised on the e-Maryland Marketplace. And beginning in July of this year, Montgomery County will begin enforcing its countywide ban of gas-powered leaf blowers. And as a result of this, we had more landscaping companies submitting bids. We received 9 complete bid packages for this services contract. The lowest qualified bidder was Davy Tree Experts, and they are known to us because they also provide us with our tree maintenance contract. But they do have 2 distinctly separate services. So they have the landscape services and then they have the tree. And I reached out to the references they provided, and everyone gave us gave us good references for them. We've worked with Davy Tree for the last 2 years now, and they've always been very responsive to our requests. They came out in emergency situations, such like that. So I come before you to request offering the 3-year with 2 1-year extensions to Davy Tree Expert Company for our landscape maintenance services.
Sure. Well, yeah.
I'm Heloise Morgan. I'm from Center Street. What I want to know is, do these services involve cutting back the ivy that's choking various trees in the village?
So that is actually done under our tree maintenance contract. And if there are areas where you are seeing that, please bring those to our attention and we will have our tree. So this is a bit confusing because as proposed, we would have one larger parent company name that we would have 2 major contracts with.
Right.
But they do distinctly different things for us. And so under this contract, this is landscape maintenance. So this is mowing and mulching and weeding. Ivy removal, because that is a form of tree maintenance, falls under the tree maintenance contractor. So certainly do bring that to our attention in locations where you're seeing that, and we will certainly have.
So is that Talbot Feather at this point?
So Dr. Feather is under a separate contract for arborist services. Davy Tree Expert Company holds the current contract for tree maintenance services.
Okay, and did they have that before? They had it before, right?
We've had Davy Tree now for 2 years.
2 years,
For 2
yeah.
Okay, so just as an example, there's a wonderful oak tree on Grafton Street, and it was being strangled by ivy, and it's been going on for a while. And I was watching it, and I said, "The hell with it! Nobody's doing anything." So I have Weed Warrior. I know how to get rid of ivy. So I spend a couple of days, here and again, cutting it. And interestingly, anybody who walked by me said, "Oh, I'm glad someone's doing that." And I thought, maybe you could do that, because I didn't know, how that came about.
Yeah, just give the staff a call because we'll
Okay.
take care of things. We'll
All
make
right,
sure
because
that.
I didn't know, and nothing was happening, and whoever was doing the tree maintenance wasn't doing anything. So, okay,
No, we
thank you.
certainly welcome that guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. So, does anyone have a motion about Davy Tree being the
I
landscape?
move to authorize the village manager to enter into a contract and substantially the form provided and subject to review by village council with the Davy Tree Expert Company for the performance and landscape maintenance services for initial term of 3 years, with the option to extend the contract for up to 2 additional 1-year terms.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. So the next thing on the agenda is the police report. And we have,
Yes, we had a couple thefts from auto. 3 of them occurred in Saks Fifth Avenue. Montgomery County Police is following up on that one because they were involved in other thefts throughout the county involving their stolen vehicle they had. And then we had a theft from a building where Officer Timmerman and a detective from Montgomery County worked together, identified the suspect, and recovered the property that was taken. And those charges been pressed against the person at this time. And then on far the administrative side, there's an update on that. We just got an application today from somebody that was interested in it and already did a ride along. And we're currently setting up a interview with that person to proceed forward. And that's it.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. And the
It's
manager's
safer if
report.
the Fitness equipment is imminent. That's what I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a segue to that, in case, excuse me, any board members are approached, we have been responding to the issue of security trailers in the Saks Fifth Avenue parking lot. This was brought to our attention. Jacqueline Parker went out there to assess exactly what was happening. It was giving, yes, and it was giving off an audible message that was so loud it could be heard as far away as Kirkside Drive, and was being heard inside of people's homes. And it is motion activated, and it would sound an alarm. It would sound a voice that said, this property is under surveillance, et cetera, et cetera. So Jackie has been in communication with the security company that Saks Fifth Avenue has contracted with, and was successful in getting them to turn the audible voice portion of this trailer off. We understand that the blue light that it blinks is also visible from some properties, but it looks like that has also somewhat been managed, but we're continuing to manage and deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it if you look at it. It's not like you see the light in your house or.
One of the residents on Belmont Avenue initially said that he could see it.
I don't doubt that one, though.
Yeah. So I've also asked, in anticipation of what is likely forthcoming changes on the Saks Fifth Avenue property in the next 10 years or so, I've also asked our arborists to do a really concerted effort at looking at opportunities to create additional screening along Belmont Avenue and Oliver Street along the exterior of the Saks Fifth Avenue property. As you all are familiar, in the buffer itself, we have a pretty high fence between the buffer and the shopping center. Along Saks Fifth Avenue, there's actually a pretty low stone wall, but a lot of evergreens on the village side of that wall. But we want to try to deepen that screening as much as we can. Anticipating that trees are lost from time to time, we want there to be sufficient enough screenings that even if a tree has to come out, there's enough other screening in there to protect those residents from whatever the future may hold on the Saks Fifth Avenue property. So we'll be working with Dr. Feather and the tree committee to get that done here in our upcoming planting cycles. So also just wanted to take a minute to update the board on an interesting meeting that Sue Ellen, Jackie, Mr. Crockett, and I had with PEPCO on Friday regarding the streetlight network along state right-of-ways. So we were informed by PEPCO a couple of weeks ago, actually it's probably been about a month and a half ago now, that when they were required as a result of ALCAR's legislation a couple of years ago to do a defined inventory of their streetlight network, they identified finally have a map and a database now that reflects all of the streetlights, including those along state highways. And they went to State Highway and said, we've identified that these lights are yours, but we don't know who has been paying for these lights for all of these years. And so State Highway sent them this directive that basically says that they don't pay for streetlights that illuminate their right-of-way unless it's at an intersection. And so the meeting that we had on Friday was to discuss kind of next steps and a path forward. So Ellen, do you want to go ahead and pick up from there?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. As usual, PEPCO did not show up with did not provide reports ahead of time. We've asked them to do that numerous times and they don't. So they go over what they produced that day and then you see it later that day. They had promised the municipalities, because of course you're not the only one that this has happened to, they had promised the municipalities that they would set up a three-way meeting with State Highway, PEPCO, and the municipalities to discuss.
Oh, so
I
Ellen,
asked
you're
about
starting to break
how
up.
they were doing with that, and okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
all right, am I back? Okay. We had asked about that, and we were told that instead, the PEPCO has been talking to State Highway, and they will be sending a letter to the municipalities stating their position, which we already have heard about. We also understand that there are some MOUs with local jurisdictions that they will honor, where they have the maintenance of the lights, and they accepted that responsibility. We haven't seen any of those. We've asked to see them. So right now, State Highway is about to send out a letter, and we expect that it will say that the maintenance of the lights and paying for the electricity will be on the municipalities. PEPCO does not know who's been paying for these lights up till now. Gloria Lee, who was at the meeting, made a totally unsubstantiated statement that it seems to be evening out. So all of the lights that they thought they were overcharging the municipalities for are probably State Highway lights. When I asked one of the folks who can actually speak for PEPCO to confirm that at the meeting, Andrew Sindall, he said, no, they actually can't say that with any certainty. So their record keeping is terrible. We knew that. And this is just another example of it. So once we get the letter, then we're going to have to make a decision about who to talk to about it. And that would be at the state level and get it out of State Highway, because they're obviously taking a position. Otherwise, they have to find money to pay for streetlights, which they don't want to do.
And just to give the board an order of magnitude, the PEPCO has estimated 52 additional streetlights. We're currently only billed for, I believe it's 206 streetlights. So they're asserting that we would be responsible for another 52. So that is adding a 25% increase to our streetlight inventory. Now, I pointed out to them in our call, however, that a map that they showed of streetlights showed streetlights that were on the west side of Wisconsin Avenue, which isn't even within our municipal boundary. So clearly there's still even more scrubbing of their list that needs to be done. But just as a reminder, this would include if we agree to it, the east side of Wisconsin Avenue, all of Connecticut Avenue, and Brookville Road. And so that's why we're talking about such a large number, because as we talked earlier about how distinct we are from some of our neighboring municipalities, we technically have 3 state roads that either come through our municipality or are along its edge. So that is why the number is so high. Sue Ellen did ask PEPCO in this meeting on Friday if we are unable to reach a resolution and the state does not claim responsibility for the lights and we refuse to allow the lights to be added to our bill, what PEPCO would do. And eventually they confirmed that they will de-energize the streetlights along Connecticut Avenue. That is their end position, that either the state or we would have to pay for them, or they will de-energize.
But somebody has been paying for them. They just don't know who.
They just don't know who.
Right.
Well, we probably have been
Yeah,
paying. We've been paying, and other we're probably triple paying with all the little municipalities.
Well, the state
Double
does pay for streetlights. They don't even know what they've been paying for, because again, PEPCO has provided over the years no inventories to anyone. So the state doesn't even know what they're truly paying for. So it could be some combination of things. The town could be paying for them. I mean, we really don't know.
Yeah, my
Thank you
impression
so
is-
much for attending that meeting. You guys are heroes.
It was unbelievable. All I could think of was where's Elon when you need him?
It was an infuriating meeting, that is for sure.
Just tell the state we've been waiting for our receipts for a long time.
Exactly. And just so that we're clear, the 2 blatantly contradictory statements that Sue Ellen said were made were by two Pepco individuals on the same call. So they don't even have their ducks in a row coming into a meeting
Yeah.
to get their story straight. So very infuriating. And that is an aside from what is still an ongoing effort to nail down what the true cost would be for us to purchase the streetlights that we know are indeed in our public rights of way.
Yeah.
And so that is an effort that Sue Ellen is also still working. Sue Ellen, do you want to provide an update on that effort?
Yes. And the same, they've been spending a lot of time on this SHA issue recently because it was a shock to everybody. And your experience of a 25% increase is not unusual. There's a number of other folks that that are having this about the same increase in numbers, which they weren't planning on. So Pepco wants to file a tariff, and I think everything is focusing on getting to the end of this quarter and being ready to do that. And so they're supposed to be providing information to the municipalities that they promised in December. And I keep reminding them of this. I think we're going to see it about a day before they file their tariff. We have been following along with the tariff, what they propose to do. And we know, I think at this point, where the problems are in them, such as not dealing with dimmers and requiring fees that really are just not reasonable and not needed for safety. So we'll have an argument about that at the PSC. So we're still waiting for the answers on some items. I think we're coming to a conclusion on the two agreements that are needed to buy the lights, the sales agreement and the third-party attachment agreement. We still have to corral Verizon about that.
And that's as a reminder because some of the street lights are on Verizon poles, owned, not Pepco poles. And then to go back to the budget, we had discussed at the budget work session, the reason that we are moving the funds that we were setting aside for the purchase and conversion of streetlights to FY26. It is because of these ongoing conversations dragging on. And in the interim, even though we are still waiting for confirmed answers from Pepco that would allow us to come to the board and present to you the costs and options for either allowing Pepco to maintain the streetlight network and allowing them to convert it to LED under their proposed tariff versus us purchasing, owning, and operating the streetlight network. While all of this has been going on, Pepco reached out to me and other municipal representatives to ask that we make a decision and tell them now which way we want to proceed. And so I did reach out to Mr. Crockett and I said, I've gotten this request to make a firm position on behalf of the village. We're not there yet. And I plan to respond that we're not there yet because we're still waiting for information. And so Mr. Crockett was copied on that response to let them know that we couldn't possibly bring to you a recommendation because we don't have the information to put before you to try to decide how we want to move forward. But as Sue Ellen noted, Pepco seems to be very eager to move forward with this proposed LED tariff. And we are essentially letting them know that until we get the information that's needed so that you all can make an informed decision,
Right.
we will not be presenting, and we will not be in a position to make a formal position.
Got it.
And
Thank
Shayna, I am back. So any questions? If I could follow up with that one a little bit.
Yeah.
There's no requirement anywhere that you have to tell them when you want and how many lights you want to buy. And they can't require that you answer that. But then it makes you look like you're uncooperative, and that's what they try to do. So every time anyone is asked for this information, we respond by saying, we don't have enough information from you to make that decision. We need that information, please provide it. Mm-hmm. So they're just all over the place. And the call started the other day with one of the main participants being late and saying he's having a very busy day.
Ms. Morgan, did you have a question?
Yeah, this is
tangential.
Sorry, if you could just come up to the microphone in case it's something that Sue Ellen needs to weigh in on.
I don't think so. This is going to be personal preference. So I'm very concerned about the natural environment. I've lived here over 30 years, and I've watched as the insect population has gone down, down, down. This is not good for any of us. And I think as people who are educated, we should know about these things. You need to have native plants to support the insects that we have that are native, and the caterpillars that feed baby birds. They can't eat seed. They have to have protein. And each caterpillar has its own, trees that it can feed on. And for example, a clutch of chickadees and their little birds need about 9,000 caterpillars to be fed. So, robin would need more. And so there's a couple of things I've got in mind. I'm sorry, but I don't know where else to say this. Lights are very important. If you have, monochrome lights out there, especially if they're bright and they're not at a more yellow, amber, some people even have red frequencies, you're going to sort of scare away all the night insects like the moths and the fireflies, by the way. Before the park was constructed, there were thousands of them in there, and bats and all kinds of things. I've been studying fireflies, and I'm working with DNR to try and figure out, if we can save areas, because a firefly is kind of an indicator species. It's easy to see, but it also means there are other things flying around. So I'm very concerned about the wavelength of the light.
Yeah, it's been one of our concerns as well. We're going to keep them
as
yellow
yellow as
and
you
low.
can, and the early evening fireflies, get this, have pink filters over their eyes so that they can filter out a lot of light from the sunset, but and they can fly in those lights because I've seen them. But there are many late night fireflies, which you probably haven't noticed because who thinks of it? You just think of the ones who go at the garden, but they can't. And I'm saying I've done studies at the Tuxent Refuge. I've done them in our neighborhood. I've done them in some of the state parks. It's so important to have these insects. So that's.
Thank you. Thanks for your
Which
comments.
is a great rationale for us owning and controlling the streetlight network, because then we would have more localized control of the lighting. And one of the technologies that Sue Ellen mentioned is dimming technology that would give us the ability to dim the streetlight network in zones, in particular locations, to, again, kind of maximize the use of the streetlights to the best needs of our community. So we just wanted to update the board on that.
That would include the park, because that's where they would live, and that's where they did live. Because I was in there studying those too until the ground was dug up, and there's hardly anything there now. So that'd be nice if it would be on. You walk by, the light goes on. It's not on all the time.
So I think we're at that point in the meeting that,
I move to adjourn.
I have one.
oh,
This is not street light, but one thing I talked to Shane about this morning, just wanted the board to be aware of. During the session after COVID, when DC was studying the bike lane on Connecticut Avenue, I got fairly involved because I was very concerned that if they did take out another lane where they eliminated the counterflow lane, it would cause a lot of cut through in the village. And I got to, in that regard, and we won on that one. They didn't put bike lanes in, which would further reduce Connecticut Avenue and cause more backup. I got called by Sharon Kirschbaum, who's the head of DC DOT. And she said, you ought to be aware of this. The Park Service for the last year has been studying Rock Creek and Potomac Parkways to improve certain intersections, big ones like down at Virginia Avenue that go in Penn Center. But one of the options that they've been looking at is eliminating the one-way traffic in the AM peak and evening peak, coming down in the morning and back in the evening.
For the
And it
Parkway.
would have
For Rock Creek Parkway.
Exactly.
Right.
And it would have substantial impact on us because those poor cars would have nowhere else to go but up Connecticut Avenue through the village and cutting through. So sometime this month, they're going to announce that they're going to, for about 30 days, get public opinion and then look at it for another year with that public input and then make a decision. It's something that we ought to be on, when it all comes out and we get engaged with, we ought to be on record about because it would be a disaster.
Yeah, no, I think
So
that.
anyway, just.
And it's aimed at reducing the cost of what the current process is that police officers.
Right.
Yeah,
I think it's at least
It's
4
pretty labor
officers
intensive.
have to
Right.
go to each end to close the road down. And so the question is, rather than eliminating the one-way traffic configuration, maybe there are automated solutions that could be
Instead of they
implemented
have
instead
like
of having
8
officers.
Park Service policemen, I don't believe you
Yeah.
experience it, but they're worried about their safety.
Right.
There are other ways to control it. Anyway.
well, thanks. We're going to have to keep tabs on that.
Yes.
All right, so
Imagine my excitement at being able to move to adjourn twice.
all
I so moved.
in favor. Great, thank you all.
We're going to have to do that more often for you.
That's right. I don't know if I heard you say it.
Very exciting.